Greetings and welcome to Public Works. And we have Chris Philos, the County Commissioner, is in the house tonight.
Oh.
Chris, welcome.
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you, but we know you're there. Anyway, first up today, Monty McCulley. Bike corrals, one of our favorite subjects here at Public Works.
You see the report is to the General Services Committee.
So I'm here to talk on behalf of Architects West to ask for the approval of a bike corral in the street right-of-way near their building. I'll give you a little background. So we had a little pilot project a few years back on bike corrals. The city got a private sponsor to pay for the construction of 2 bike corrals. And then we found a couple locations for bike corrals and we put them in. Now we maintain those, we move them every winter because you have to be moved every winter so they don't block the streets from plowing. We have since talked quite a bit on what to do in the future if more bike corrals come in. The Ped Bike Committee has come to the conclusion that we're going to identify some spots in the downtown core, get the downtown association's approval, the parking commission's approval, and then whenever a business wants to buy one, they would be responsible for buying it and maintaining it and moving it in the winter. So the city wouldn't be taking on any more bike corrals. So as a matter of fact, in the future, in the next few months, I'll be bringing forward a process for future bike corrals. They don't come in very often, but when they do, it's a kind of a pain to have to spend 3 months going through the approval process instead of having the permit process. So I'll be bringing that forward as well. But these guys came in ahead of that process, so that's why we're going a long way through you guys and through council. So as you can see, the current bike corrals, we have one here at Calypso's and we have one over here at Crafted. They're both well used at certain times of the day. Certain times they're empty, but you know, I've seen Crafted's overflowing with 12 or 14 bikes nearly every evening in the summer. And Calypso's, it's a different time, but they also can be pretty crowded. Even the one down here in front of Tito's, right here, can be pretty crowded at times too. Now during the day, if you drive by, if you work 9 to 5, you're not going to see very many bikes in some of these. But if you go down after hours, then boy, it gets a lot of use. So I don't have Tito's on here because that's not ours. So we do have some proposed locations. This is what we presented to the Parking Commission, and they actually sent it back and said, no, we have more spots that we think are better, and I'm going to get back together with them. We decided to make the bike corrals smaller. Instead of 20 feet long, we might go shorter, like 10 feet, 15 feet, take up less space, put them in areas like the one that we're looking at here for Architects West that's in a bulb out. So these are vision triangles. And when you have a car parked there, it makes it really difficult, especially at this intersection, to see around the cars coming. So the Parking Commission's idea was let's locate all these places that have really difficult to see around the corner. We can put a bike corral in these little, near the bulb outs. It'll prevent a car from parking there, and it'll make it safer and cars won't get into as many accidents. So that's the thinking there. So in the meantime, we're bringing forward this, this bike corral from Architects West. There's a little close-up of it. It's not letting me look at it. Basically, it's just
Green.
right here across from Seasons. So Seasons customers could use it as well as Torre Viejo and all the other businesses in this area. It would probably take the place of this proposed one. I don't think we'd need 2 on one block. So this would be moving up here. And I can give you this is what the bike corral permit will kind of look like. I'll go through this really quick. Basically, they come in, we explain what they're all about, the dimensions, their responsibilities, what they can look like, and then they apply, and then we'd send it around to staff and get approval from them. But this time around, we're gonna take it through to council since we don't have a process. And I had a bunch of pictures to show you what they look like, but it looks like this computer's not letting me show you but just a couple. So here's a really simple one. It's not big and bulky like the ones we have that stick out. And this is the one that we have. It's nice. It's a little too wide. I think our dimensions, we're going to require, even of this Architects West, would be no more than 5 feet wide, and this one's 6. And this one's 20 feet long. We'd probably go less than that, 15 or even shorter. So we would be losing a parking spot downtown. The downtown, or the parking commission was okay with that as long as it was near that bulb out. And any future ones, they would like to, they want to identify those areas ahead of time, and then anything outside of the downtown core would be internally decided on by staff. So that is my presentation. I'm sure you have questions.
Mr. Gookin?
Thank you. Always questions. So the one in front of Tap House is not a city one, so how did they get to do that? Do you have a permit for it?
I'm not sure if they did or not. They didn't go through the Parks Department. So I'm not sure who they went through. They didn't come to us. It appeared one day. I know they talked to somebody, and they got approval from somebody, but it wasn't Parks. Might have been Streets.
So why haven't we put a ticket on the thing and towed it away? That's my question.
Yeah, that's why I thought that it must have been legal, because our street guys would have, our building inspectors would have gone by and
So
red tagged.
my point to you on that is that you're going to need, when you write your policy, you're going to need to allow for that.
Right.
So if it's there, it has to be permitted, because that's public right-of-way. I'm sure I'm using the right lingo there, and they can't just put something there. Now I feel better about running into it. The one that you showed on 4th Street was on the wrong side of the street. So be very careful when you, I mean, I know that was just a proposed idea, but 4th Street, the parking's only on the west side of the street, not the east side, so it would create a choke point there. I favor going forward with a policy so that there's a method for this, because my big concern is that parking is an issue downtown. And according to our parking report, there's like 200 and, I wrote it down, 221 spaces that we have a deficit. And the specific map from the parking report shows that the blocks around which this bike corral is being proposed have a deficit of negative 114 spaces and negative 57 spaces on the east side, and on the west side there's a surplus of 21 spaces. But still, that's like, you know, so we have, on one hand, we have people from the parking study who say, yeah, parking's a big problem downtown, we're spending $6 million building a parking garage because of it. And on the other hand, we're going to say, no, let's take away some parking spaces so bikes can park. And downtown's not biking friendly. I mean, it's not a destination. When I bike, I go through McEwen, or I go up your street because it's not crowded. But otherwise, downtown is not really, I mean, this has to be kind of thought out about where the bikes go. They do go to Crafted. I have seen them there. I have seen them out in front of the Tap House, because that's kind of the theme of Tap House. It's a bike bar, I guess. But I like them in front of Calypso's, because that's it's a cutaway. It's a driveway. So it was an old loading dock. So putting it there makes sense, because no one's going to park there. I mean, you would risk getting a ticket if you parked in a driveway. So I can see maybe we have some other spots like that downtown where we could prioritize putting these things where someone's not going to park anyway. But that all, I mean, I think this should be crafted into the policy when you do that, when you think about how and where to place these things. Because you got to keep in mind that downtown parking is, it's a big deal. And especially over there by Architects West, that's one of those areas where it's tough to find a space.
Right. And I will say the one on 4th Street here that was on the other side of the street,
Yeah.
I think the idea there, and actually this one is probably going to go away. I met with Terry Cooper. I just hadn't changed the map.
Oh.
And he thought we could rearrange sidewalk furniture to actually get bike racks in the sidewalk instead of a bike corral on the spot, on the street. So, and I think the idea was so people could see, but of course the corner of the building would block it, but we're trying to get the largest amount of people that do sidewalk seating here,
Up there.
they lock their bikes to all the trees and the grates and the fences and block it so wheelchairs can't get by. We're trying to clean that all up. And we thought a bike corral here because they're closer to their bike, but we also decided they couldn't see it. And people like to see their bikes, and so
Oh, good
we
point.
might end up putting the bike racks here instead.
Well, I'm glad you're thinking about that, because that's, you're right. I mean, we could do motorcycle parking out in front of the Iron Horse, and I think it would be full.
Yeah.
We had it there. But I know it's good that you're thinking about this. I just think, from my perspective, this is cool, and I've used them, but we got to look at parking too, because parking is a big thing, and that's going to be the pushback, especially when you look at that map, and that, again, that has to be kind of part of the policy going forward. Is this a red block, or a yellow block, or a green block? Because you probably want to put the bike corrals on the green blocks where people aren't hunting for spaces.
Right. And I agree that it needs to be well thought out. Like Crafted's was perfect because
Yeah.
you got 14 bikes, that's 14 less cars, but other places might not be, as well used.
Well, just to also add to the discussion, I was at the Planning Commission meeting when this came up, and I can guarantee you that what you're talking about, everybody was right on top of that. So, I mean, they're very tuned in to balancing, the need for parking, and like you just mentioned, actually the fact that people, if they ride their bikes down, now maybe they wouldn't have come otherwise, but at least a certain percentage of those would have been cars, so we're actually saving. But this whole idea of they really seems to make sense of identifying parking spots that really, there may be just barely one car, but it'd be better if a car wasn't there, to put them into those identified spots. So anyway, I think there is quite a bit of thought going into that and balancing, but I will make a motion to recommend to City Council the approval of a permit for Architects West to purchase and install and maintain and remove in the winter a bike corral. So,
Yeah, and I'm not going to second that, because my motion instead would be that just to hold off on this, but move forward with a policy. So come to us with something that's really well thought out, that talks about planning for the future. I'd rather have something that was written down where someone like Architects West, who wants to buy one, can then fit into our master plan. And I didn't, now, Ped Bike, I tried to find it online, and our webpage is terrible for finding things. But the Trails Master Plan, did it address this at all? Did it address parking for bikes downtown?
It addressed bike corrals.
Yeah?
I can't remember how detailed it went. I probably put something in there about specifying pre-existing locations or predetermined locations for bike corrals downtown. Anywhere else in the city, it would be case by case, but down here, we
Right.
really need a plan. And this was kind of the plan that Ped Bike Committee came up with a couple years ago. And we just hadn't had a lot of people coming forward with bike corrals. And so now that we're getting more interest in it, we thought we should make a policy.
Yeah.
Plus, it was one of the projects for my schooling, and so I made this whole policy. I just got to run it through the channel. But yeah,
That would be what the direction that I would favor, is let's go ahead and implement a policy so that we can have kind of control over where these things go, so that if someone says, Architects West does it, we approve that, someone else comes along and says, well, we want one in front of our thing too, it's kind of hard to say no when you've already told someone else yes, and then it's like, well, we don't really have our master plan in place. So I would prefer going ahead and doing a plan, having that all in place, and then coming back and looking at these and telling them, yeah, you can do this. Or if you want to sponsor one, the nearest one to where your business is here, or I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of work obviously involved in that, and I think it would be kind of jumping ahead here if I approve that right now. And the rest of council may say, okay.
Let me sort of address this. I just had a couple of questions. They're kind of along the same lines. We have to do, when you want to do a stop sign or a traffic light, you have to warrant it. So we don't have warrants for a bicycle rack unless somebody asks for it, and I kind of go along with that. My question, though, is if somebody asks for it in front of their property because they think that that's where those customers are going to park, what about the guy across the street? Does he want to lose that parking spot? I guess the question is, what about input from the businesses? Not just the guy who has it in front of him, but the neighborhood. I was looking at your Second Street one, thinking of the impact that the Eagles have on all the parking there on Friday and Saturday night, pretty much all year round, and thinking, wow, you're going to give up a spot for bikes, and I'm fine with that. The other one is, I think, maybe because we don't have an agreement here, can you what do you think if you bring it to council, our next council meeting, and you can throw it back this way, or as Mr. Gookin said, you might go back to Architects West and go, you guys, it kind of makes sense for us to maybe step back and look at this with fall coming, winter coming, and come up with a plan of who decides where they go and when. Is that something that you could work with? Otherwise, I don't think, we're going to go to council anyway then, and we've got sort of two different opinions, unless you have an idea on that.
Right, and it's something I could bring through over the winter and get it approved. I know they were anxious to get one, and the season is over, and they might be just totally fine with that. And it would probably give us time, because in the downtown core, they did want, the downtown association was okay with certain locations for bike corrals, as long as we thought it out, it's like you guys said. And the parking commission, they like the idea of shortening the bike corrals and putting them in locations like Dan was saying, where near alleys where you can't get around, a truck can't get around to get in because there's a car parked too far, that sort of thing. And that's, if that's the decision of this committee, then I'm perfectly okay with that, yeah.
You get a consensus
Well,
on
if-
that?
Well, I'm not sure where we're at in our order process, but I guess I would just give a counterpoint that I think it does make sense to look at an overall policy. I guess I also look at the term, in my sense of fairness, due process. You know, if we're going to draw a new regulation, that's fine, but for somebody who asked before it went into effect and it, you know, makes sense, I guess to me, it's like, I could be very comfortable with approving this and then having somebody come to me and say, hey, how about Arctic? Well, you know what, up to that point, we didn't have this, now we do, and this is the law now. So, anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'll still stand with my motion, but if it
Okay.
doesn't get a second, it doesn't, so.
All right, so the motion fails with lack of a
Okay.
second. I'm just going to throw it to council.
Yeah.
And then you can re-present it, and if you
Sounds
can make some changes in between, or get enough support for him to go along with it. I seem to remember us doing things without the forethought, and then going back and kind of smacking ourselves, going, man, we should have, and I get it, but timing is perfect for you right now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is that good for you?
Yeah.
Monty?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
I got a bunch of things to bring through to you guys.
so we'll see on Tuesday.
Okay, bye-bye.
Well, that was fun.
Also, just, and I know Jim's not here, and he should be, but I am going to
I
put
gave
in
him
a,
the night off.
oh, you did? I am going to put in a question just to him about the one bike corral in front of Tap House and say, why is this here? Or how is this here? So we could get an answer as to why, because we need to figure, we're going to do a plan, we need to figure out where they fit into the plan.
And I do remember them coming to Pet Bike Committee asking where to put it, or somebody came to us and we said, well, we recommend it going on 2nd Street off of Sherman North by where they had the little beer garden for Oktoberfest this
Right.
weekend. But they didn't go through us, so I don't know how it got there from after that point, but I'm sure somebody does.
They do take it down, so it's not there in the winter, but, yeah.
Thanks, Monty.
We'll find out.
Moving right along, declare surplus used equipment and vehicles. Tim Martin, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman, council members. Today, in front of you, I'm looking for consent to declare several pieces of equipment and vehicles to be deemed surplus and authorize us to auction them. These vehicles have come forward to the department. We look to find homes inside the city for them if there's any needs, and these vehicles here today, we couldn't find a home, but I also have a good story for you. This one on the left is the white one. The Chevy was the street department's. It's got 138,000 miles on it. We used that. That was our welder's vehicle, and we got a vehicle that was surplused out of fire and replaced this one with that one. The next one there is a 99 GMC. That originally used to be our de-icer salt vehicle that we use downtown. That's the vehicle we had to take offline last winter because the brakes failed on it and we couldn't buy parts. So with that, we took one of Kenny's vans that came out of the Geo bond. Kenny had 2 of these vans. They were both ex-rental units, and what we did was take the back off of it and created our new salt truck out of one of Kenny's vans. But the other one here's got 171,000 miles on it, and we're going to get rid of it. Next to it on the left is a Durango that came out of the fire fleet that was also in the Geo bond. And this little Astro van came back from Boise here a year ago.
Oh, it came home.
It came home, so
I'm glad.
it is also on the auction.
What are we replacing it with?
We've got a vehicle down there now. It's a Grand Caravan.
Oh.
We purchased 2 years ago with the used equipment line.
Okay.
This here is some various signal components. Most of them are the LED bulbs. We somehow inherited these all from ITD, and they're not going to work for us, so it's time to get rid of them. They've just been out in our cold storage unit. This is some of the video components out of our TV truck, the drainage utility truck that we have a city in southern Idaho that is interested in this equipment, but we have to surplus it out in order to do that. And then there's just various pieces of cabinets and stuff laying around. So what I'm looking for is your consent to put these on the calendar and deem them surplus.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Dan?
I think it makes sense. I just, and I can see that white pickup was pretty well used up, but I'm just thinking, man, I wish my pickup only had 138,000 now, but it wasn't used that hard, so.
Well, one of the things that I try to remind you periodically is not only is it the mileage, but they sit out at job sites idling, as we're moving along, or they have the strobe lights on and things, and there's a lot of hours on those
Oh, yeah,
pieces
I
of
don't
equipment.
debate. I would make a recommendation that we send it to council for approval of surplusing the property.
Well, let's put it on the consent calendar, and I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded to put it on the consent calendar. All those in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Thank you.
That was easy. All right, looks like our last item, Mike Anderson, all the way from the wastewater treatment plant. I almost used the wrong word, Mike. In regards to surplus, it's a surplus day.
Correct, yes. I've got a surplus item as well that I'd like to request, or an item that I'd request for you guys to consent to surplus. This is a 6-inch trash pump. The wastewater utility uses it for,
Pumping trash.
we'll empty out large tanks with it, but you can see it's mobile, it's on wheels. It's used for emergencies. If most of our collection system flows by gravity, and we try to keep it that way, but we do have a few lift stations throughout the city, and this is used as an emergency backup. In case one of those lift station pumps were to fail, we've got quick connect systems that will connect hoses up to this, and it comes obviously with a diesel-powered motor, and we can just run it and keep that area from flooding. But this pump was purchased in 2001, and because of its uses, it needs to be a reliable piece of equipment. So we would, we've already budgeted for a new one and purchased a new one. And now that we've received our new one, we're ready to get rid of this one. And we looked around within the city for anybody who might need a 6-inch pump. We actually had two. We had a 4-inch and a 6-inch. We have found a home for the 4-inch. It's very user-friendly. It's just a smaller hose, and when you're maneuvering it around, it's not nearly as cumbersome. But we couldn't find a home for the 6-inch. So we are looking to surplus this, and would ask that you put it on the consent calendar.
Any questions? 6-inch pipe, you guys, that's a lot of pipe.
The only way you're going to move it is with a forklift or something like that. It's quite cumbersome to move around, but the capacity of it is necessary.
Sure you don't want to send it to one of the islands that got hit? or
Yeah,
something?
that's not a bad idea.
Come get it. Anyway, look for a motion then.
Move that we surplus this item and place it on the consent calendar.
Second?
Been moved and second. Any thoughts, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And I think that's all the business we have. And with that, we should adjourn. Thank you for coming. Always nice to see you, Rand. From across the street and down.